When I was 14 or 15, which was back in the mid-1990s, I moved with my family to a new town in Illinois. I didn't want to go, to be honest, but my dad had started a new job nearby, and there would be more money coming in, so there's not really much I could say. It was a quaint enough place and the locals seemed okay, if a little suspicious of newcomers. Starting at a new school wasn't too bad and I quickly made friends with two guys straight away, Jay and Tommy. Before I knew it, I'd lived there for a month and fall was coming. This was my favorite time of year, not just because of the colors of the trees and falling leaves, but also because of the smell of bonfires and slightly chilly air. I lived in the newer, southern part of the town and so did Tommy, but Jay lived in the older part to the north, and would often joke about how his house was older than mine and Tommy's combined. One Friday lunchtime, Jay asked me if I wanted to do something fun but scary in the evening. Straight away I was intrigued. In fact, all day, I kept asking him what it was all about, but he would only tell me three things. Firstly, we wouldn't be alone, a couple of Jay's other friends would be there, a few of which I'd met before and they were fine. Secondly, I was to bring a small mirror with me, like the size of the one in my mother's purse. Lastly, I was not to mention it to Tommy. I agreed to all three. So I met Jay at 8 o'clock. He was outside the convenience store with his buddies, Carl, Dean, and Lucy. I'd met Carl before and knew of Dean but had never met Lucy, and I don't mind admitting that I was a little shy around her to begin with. Jay told me that we were heading up to the old railway station, which was only about 10 minutes walk. We shot the breeze along the way, and I was taking in how the houses here looked so different to the ones on my side of town. This wasn't exactly a poor area or anything, it just looked different and I much preferred it. Soon, we were at the train station, which was basically a small building, smaller platform and a car park built for maybe 10 cars. Adjacent to the station was a long, eerie-looking alleyway. It was hard to see in the dark, but it looked like it went on forever. There were lots of broken beer bottles on the floor and illegible graffiti on the walls. Jay beckoned me over and along with Carl, Dean, and Lucy, we walked maybe 20 feet into the alley. Jay asked me if I had the mirror. I said that I had, and he pointed behind me, to something written on a section of the fence. The writing looked very old, but Jay read out what it said, clearing his throat beforehand. To see Angry Annie, walk all the way down to the oak tree. Take out your mirror and hold it in front of you. Close your eyes and say Angry Annie 5 times, then open your eyes and look into the mirror. You might just see her standing behind you. As you can imagine, I felt quite uneasy. Jay said that he had done it before, but nothing happened. Dean and Carl said they'd tried the ritual a few times with their older brothers. Although they hadn't seen anything, Dean's brother did. Lucy hadn't tried it. Jay went first. Pretty soon, he was out of sight. Dean went after, followed by Lucy, who seemed excited by the whole thing and jokingly told me to man up. Very soon, she disappeared into the mist. I was next, and I was terrified. What if it worked? Could I handle seeing a ghost looking at me in a mirror? I had to go though. Carl nudged me and I began walking further into the alleyway. I had never felt so alone. If I could have seen any of the others ahead of me, I might have felt calmer, but I couldn't. The alley was just so eerie. The only noise you could hear was a low humming sound, maybe from the train tracks which were nearby. I stopped for a moment and turned around. I could just about see Carl, who gave me a wave. He looked far away. Part of me thought that this was just a prank, somebody would jump out on me and everybody would laugh. I actually would have preferred that. The oak tree was up ahead on the left-hand side. It looked out of place and like it didn't belong. I slowed down a little, trying to delay what I would have to do, but in no time, I was there. It didn't help that this was the darkest part of the alleyway. I stopped walking, took a deep breath and held the mirror out. My breath fogged it up momentarily. Then I said the words with my eyes closed. Angry Annie. Angry Annie. Angry Annie. Angry Annie. Angry Annie. It took a few seconds to work up the courage to open my eyes, and thankfully when I did, there was nothing behind me. I smiled. My shoulders lowered and the sense of relief I felt was incredible. The whole thing was just a stupid story. Who on earth was Angry Annie meant to be anyway? I didn't care, it was over. I could feel myself perspiring, and I knew that Lucy was up ahead, so I checked in the mirror. For a moment, I thought Carl had caught up with me, but when I adjusted the mirror, I saw something, the worst thing I've ever seen. Angry Annie was right there behind me. She had the most hateful face I'd ever seen. I tried to scream, I tried to move, but nothing happened. I just froze and dropped the mirror, it smashed on the floor. It took all of my courage and strength to start moving again, and slowly, I did, but when I eventually saw Jay, Lucy and Dean, they knew that I'd seen her. Nobody else had, and on the walk home, not one of us talked. They could tell how traumatized I was. A few weeks later, I asked Jay why he insisted that Tommy not know about our trip to the alleyway. Jay replied that Tommy had also seen Angry Annie and he wouldn't even go to that part of town. In the years that passed, I often wondered why only some people saw her, and I tried to research the subject of Annie, but could never find any information about her online. That alleyway is still there, and I wonder if those rules are still written on the walls. Maybe other generations have gone to summon Angry Annie. I'd been with Laura for just over 3 months. We met in our second year of college and clicked right away. Usually people are pretty careful and guarded until they get to know one another, but not Laura. She was playful and made me laugh from the start. She also challenged me, which I wasn't used to people doing. Laura was not technically in a sorority, but she was associated closely with one that was kind of hush-hush. They were respected by the college, but they were way more elusive than the other groups and threw the wildest parties in their large house. As time went by, I got to know a lot of the sisters. And I have to say, they were always good to me. I was told that as long as I treated Laura right, then they'd treat me right, which was fair enough. There was one thing I was a bit unsure of though, or maybe I just didn't understand. On the 3rd floor of the house they lived in was a small room which I was warned not to enter. I asked Laura about it, of course, my curiosity getting the better of me, but she just said that it was used for storage and she couldn't talk about it. During a Christmas party, I needed to use the bathroom and they were all occupied, but there was a small one up on the 3rd floor. I needed to go badly, so made my way up the stairs and saw that a girl called Olivia was standing guard outside the forbidden room. I didn't question it and just said hi, then did my business, but as I finished, some girls came out of the room carrying really old, heavy-looking books. After that, the party was over and most of us were asked to leave. In January, one of the sisters asked to see me and said that they had something prepared. Something special, and I was the main thing. I was told not to worry, but to wrap up, and we were headed out that evening. Again, I asked Laura what it was all about, but she said that she couldn't tell me. Although she wasn't in the sorority, and she didn't let me know why at that point, she was considering it, and secrets and promises were a big deal to the sisters. So I was picked up on campus, not really understanding what was going on, and followed by another car. The sisters were all very high-spirited, and apart from a few joking comments thrown my way, I was virtually ignored the whole journey, especially by Laura, which was odd. She was very quiet and not her usual self at all. It took about 20 minutes of driving through the dark countryside to get to our destination, which was an old mansion that I had never seen before. It looked creepy and decrepit, and there were already a few lights on inside. Once we parked up, I was ushered out by Christine and Sue. Laura was talking with the girls from the other car, and as I was led into the house, I got an uneasy feeling. I went into the house and there was a lavish meal prepared in the kitchen. They'd really gone to town on this. A couple of younger women, who I presumed were pledges, had been very busy. They took an expensive-looking suit out of a protective bag and told me to put it on. There was a downstairs bathroom that I could use to change. My nerves started to ease. I felt like they just wanted us to have a romantic meal. I wasn't allowed any alcohol though, and had to wait at the table for half an hour for Laura, who emerged from upstairs looking just incredible. Her makeup looked professionally applied and her dress was very classy. We were then left alone to enjoy a candlelit roast dinner in the unfamiliar house. We both began to unwind and had nearly finished when I saw two of the sisters walk through the front door and up the stairs, carrying those heavy-looking books that I'd seen come out of the forbidden room in the sorority house. Before I could react, Sarah, who was the president of the sorority, came in and said that it was time to finish dinner, as there was a game to play. Alarm bells began to ring in my head at this point, but Laura seemed to already know what was going to happen. Sarah led us out of the dining room and she was assured by another pledge that everything was ready. Laura and I were led upstairs. There were candles lighting the way and countless sisters stood in silence as we walked. In a large bedroom on the top floor, we were shown in and Sarah closed the door behind us. She looked me in the eye and asked if I was in love with Laura, which was a little direct, but I did, so I said yes, which seemed to please her. She then asked if I trusted her and the sisters. Again, I said yes, although I was baffled by all of this. Sarah then asked me to hold my hand out, and as soon as I did, she grabbed it and said that I'd feel a sting as she cut the end of my thumb with a scalpel. She then instructed me to go into the large wardrobe with Laura, which I did. Whatever was going to happen, I just wanted it over with. Sarah said that she was leaving and Laura would take over. As soon as I heard the bedroom door close, I asked Laura what the hell was going on. Laura said that it would be okay, lots of people had done this before, and she pulled a small panel out of the back of the wardrobe. I could just about make out a small room through the hole, lit by candles. Laura said to put my hand through. I did, and heard a scuttling noise. Immediately I drew my arm back in, but Laura said that trust was the point of this, so I put my hand back again. The scuttling turned to running and something cold grabbed my wrist. Instinctually, I tried to fight it off, but Laura shouted to let it happen. Whatever was on the other side of the wardrobe desperately checked my hand, then let out a human-like gasp and started to suck my bloodied thumb. This was the worst sensation I'd ever felt. I didn't know if it was a person or an animal, but I occasionally felt long wet hair on my hand. The thing just wouldn't stop and I shouted at Laura, how long did I have to do this for? Laura said for me to listen for it, and then I heard something that sounded like a muffled scream and a thud on the floor. It let go of my hand and I pulled back quickly. Sarah opened the wardrobe door, having come back in the bedroom, and seemed delighted. Of course I asked what was going on, but she replied that I did very well and jokingly said that I made a good appetizer. After that, my thumb was bandaged. Then we left the house and traveled back to campus. I don't know if the experience was meant to prove devotion to Laura or if something in that house just thirsted for blood. Either way, I was freaked out, but Laura became part of the sorority a few days later and we split up not long after that. There was something not right about them. Whatever was in the old house and the books from the forbidden room all added up to something very evil. And I didn't want any part of it.